My name is Elizabeth Akers Moore, Chair of the Concord Zoning Board of Appeals, and I'm calling this public meeting to order at 7:00 p.m. on July 9th. In accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order of March 12, 2020, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, we are conducting this meeting virtually. This meeting is being recorded. Following the presentation by the applicant, for which I will allow the town planner or the applicant to share the screen if they wish to make their own presentation, the board will ask questions of the applicant. Following this, I will ask for public comment. Consistent with the Select Board's temporary policy directive and guidelines for public meeting and public hearings conducted via remote participation due to COVID-19 state of emergency, the public is invited to view the meeting as an attendee only and will not be permitted video access. If an attendee has a question during the public comment period for each application, they can use the raise hand function, and I will unmute one attendee at a time so they can ask their question. Questions will be answered to the extent possible. All video screens will be turned off with the exception of the board, town planner, and the current applicant. Once the board has acted on an application, the applicant will be returned to an attendee and is free to leave the meeting. At this time, I would ask for a roll call vote of the board members. Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Kindermans.
Present.
And it's just the three of us, so we will all be voting.
No,
There's Ravi.
Oh, hi, Robbie. Sorry, I thought you weren't coming. Mr. Faia.
Hello.
Hello. Present. Yes. Fantastic. Wonderful. All right, now that is all out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with our 7 p.m. meeting. Now Communities LLC. And Dan is here. Hi, Dan. Hi, Danny.
Hello.
I don't know if you have anything else to add to your presentation from last time, but I'm sure you have some updates if you want to start with giving.
Sure. I will share the screen so you can see. All right. So just quickly, some of the things that we have happened since the last hearing. We did an additional soil test in the back of the lot in the infiltration basin, and the member of the Concord Engineering Department was there, and that resulted in just raising the basin just 2 inches, an extremely minor change. We confirmed we're providing access to the open space that is in compliance with the Architectural Access Board regulations on walkways, with that new sidewalk we're proposing from Main Street, and that will provide the connection to the existing access to the open space on the Riverwalk property. So we're just connecting to that existing access through the new sidewalk. We show the water main now connecting to the main in Main Street, as opposed to connecting off of Riverwalk, which was a concern of the Department of Public Works. And we heard from Valerie from the Water and Sewer Department that we're good for that. We responded to a Board of Health review letter with some comments on the septic system, and that's it, basically. I think that covers all the changes since the last hearing.
The only other thing I will offer is but we met with the fire department, the fire safety officer, and the the deputy chief to address their concerns, and they were satisfied with our explanation. Unfortunately, the plan was, it's been corrected now, but it was a little bit confusing, so we corrected the plan to indicate what was actually there on the ground.
Okay. Going back to the access board, did you get anything official from them? I don't remember seeing anything. Did you get any correspondence?
I spoke with Ray at the building department.
Okay.
And he seemed to agree with us, so.
I would like to get something that's a bit more stronger. No offense, Ray. But I do want to. I know that this is it's a sidewalk on streets and ways, which is assumed to be in a public right of way. So I'd like to get something stronger in the file, if that's possible, that makes this clearer for us, because I don't necessarily agree with this. Now, I don't stamp these drawings and I don't take the responsibility for this. And, you know, the building inspector can issue a building permit.
Tim, walk me through that again, what you just said about, what's your concern exactly now that I'm looking at this, the code that's up?
And then I have a little bit of trouble reading this.
So Theo, Ray Matty is on, and so I don't know if you want to have him speak to this issue.
Yeah, so well, first of all, this is sidewalks on streets and ways. Right, so that's assumed to be in a public right of way. Then, you know, we can go, or these regulations allow you to go steeper than 5%. But the moment you're out of a public right of way, my belief still is, and I'd like to be convinced otherwise, because professionally that would help me out in a few cases. The moment you get off the public right away and are on private property, everything needs to be under 5% or under 8% with a handrail. So that's how I understand these regulations.
Ray, do you want to speak to that?
Well, so my question to Theo would be, where does it say private walkways have to be 5% or less? Because this is the AAB code, and I believe it's for public or private walkways. And I think a private walkway would probably have more leniency, just because it's private property, not public. This code typically enforces buildings and property that's public.
This is public, right? This is a connection from the public street to the trail in the back. That is assumed to be a public, and that's how it's been sold to us, a connection in that walkway system. And you know, I can go through these regs here, and you know, and I'm sorry about this. I don't want to be a stickler, but I just believe that this is an incorrect interpretation.
I don't know. I think when you have a site that's as steep as this and as short of a run, I think it's almost impossible to make it comply. I think that's what the exception's for.
But this is sidewalks on streets and ways. There is no street or a way here.
But Theo, I don't think there's a difference, public or private. Like I said, I have a private residence. I don't have to make anything handicap accessible at my home because it's private. And, you know,
correct. But
that's all I have to say about this. So if you're looking for something further, I guess Dan can speak to that, or whatever you'd like them to do, I guess, Theo.
Dan, do you want to speak to this?
Sure. It's our opinion that it's a way to, it's accessed by vehicles in and out, and it doesn't mention anything about public right of ways or anything. So our interpretation is that it meets those requirements as it's worded in the regulations.
Hey, Theo, I got the definition right here in the code of a walk or walkway, and all it says is an interior or exterior pathway with a prepared surface intended for pedestrian use, including but not limited to general pedestrian areas such as plazas, courts, and crosswalks. That's the definition. But
that walkway is 5% or less. That's the definition of a walkway, right?
Well, no.
Because according to the access code, anything over 5% does not, or 8% does not exist as a walkway.
Well, I don't know. I guess we're reading it differently, Theo. That's all I can say.
Yeah, so who can help us on this?
The expert, but I feel like between Danny and our architects and Ray's interpretation, we've been consistent. I mean, I certainly don't want to get into a debate about it because I'm not the expert. But it is, you know, we have the precedent of having Riverwalk 1, and that's how we handled it. And to Ray's point, there isn't really an option for addressing it in another way. And so,
If that's the case, you should get a variance from the MAAB, right? If there's not that's.
But we believe, I mean, the problem with that, Theo, would be that we believe that it meets the requirements. And so I would think in order to go to the MAAB, we would have to be demonstrating that it doesn't meet the requirements and ask for the variance. So we're kind of stuck.
I mean, we have seen advisory opinions from, trying to get you to be comfortable with this, obviously.
Yeah, and I'm,
Elizabeth, or Ray, someone speak to how hard it is to get. I know we just had one, right, from the access board for
It's for the
Charlotte.
mobile station for the parking.
yeah, no, so I'm not convinced this is the right interpretation, but if there's an architect and a civil engineer who are stamping these drawings, it's going to be their responsibility to meet the code, right? If it's
Right.
And then the building inspector is going to then say yay or nay if he takes that interpretation or not. And Ray just indicated that he'll take that interpretation.
Elizabeth, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I don't know. I look a little bit to my colleagues here for some legal advice, whether that's sufficient for us as a board.
I certainly don't want to push you to something you're uncomfortable with, but go ahead, Elizabeth.
So Theo, I understand your concerns, and I'm also realize the fact that we do have a professional engineer, we do have a licensed architect, and the building commissioner is the one that has the responsibility and the jurisdiction within the town to review projects and whether they meet the architectural access board. And if your building commissioner is accepting and agrees with a particular interpretation, then I feel that's I feel that's sufficient. But if the board wants something further, at this point in time, I don't feel there's anything else that's holding this project up for the board to be able to move forward. So, and to hold up the project, whether AAB would provide their advisory on something that you have an engineer, an architect, and your own building commissioner agreeing with an interpretation. I understand your concerns, but the other point to the project is that it's public access. The public is going to be able to have access to this. It's not a public sidewalk within a road right of way. It is a sidewalk on an existing way. It is a way that provides vehicular access to an existing project. So I'm of the opinion that the exemption does apply, but my opinion doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, and I definitely don't want to hold this up.
Theo, I understand that, but let Jim and Ravi, do you guys have any legal thoughts on this or
Well,
non?
can I just ask a couple questions, and then I do have some legal thoughts. But what's there now is a road going. If I'm mixed up. But what is there now is a road that goes into River Way, right?
Right.
It's a driveway.
That's what I mean. It's a well, okay.
Yeah. So yeah. Sorry. This is.
So if they didn't, so part of this is if they didn't provide a sidewalk, or whatever we're going to call it. I mean, I don't know that they would have to provide a sidewalk. People could walk
They
down.
Correct, but
Correct.
if they could delete the sidewalk and we'd be just fine.
But I think that then starts to create additional issues where if you're going to have people walking
No,
down.
yeah, no,
down
I'm
the paved
I'm
road.
getting there. Yeah, Elizabeth, sorry, I'm going to get there. So that's I was just doing that before I said. I think that so my observations would be the following. First, if this way, sidewalk, whatever we want to call it, were deleted, people will still access it by going down a roadway which won't have a railing on it and won't be otherwise sort of set up. They'll just use it. They'll use it the way they always had. So my first thought is that the sidewalk will be safer for all people than the roadway would have been alone. Secondly, I think that I totally respect Theo's expertise on this, but I would just note that we, as a zoning board of appeals, are not deemed to have expertise to answer this question. I mean, that's why the building inspector or the engineer would have to stamp it, or the architectural board would have to make their comments. For us to make any attempt as a board to interpret the law, I think would be going outside our authority, quite frankly. Even if we had Theo's expertise, I think it would still be going outside of our authority. So I think that it's hard for us to sort of make a general interpretation of a statute for which we don't have any responsibility. And the third is, I do think that as a board, we are entitled, we don't have to, but we are entitled to rely on experts, including engineers, including town officials, et cetera, with respect to the decisions that we make. So, I mean, I feel like I'm in a situation where I'm not doubting Theo, and I'm not doubting anybody on this call. I just think that, for me, the setup is sort of that we have the building inspector, we have Ray's expertise, we have other things, and I just think that our call should be to say that, we have, we may even can say that we would like the building inspector as part of the, providing the final permit to, double check the law and make sure that he's confident about the fact that this works. We can do things like that, but I just don't think that we can substitute our judgment for the building inspector at this stage.
I buy part of it. I mean, I agree with you, but I think that if we have an expertise like Theo, when we raise it and then that is echoed by the people we're relying on, then that would be a valid reason to go back and ask for an opinion, which we did in the mobile. But I think in this situation, I agree with you. Theo, you raised the point. It was a good one. It was thought about by a number of experts who we rely on, and they came to a conclusion that I don't have any reason to doubt, and they don't seem to have a reason to doubt. We're giving them options here. We're giving the opportunity to say maybe.
I mean, so I read the code. I'm reading the code. That's the way I interpret it. You know, Theo has expertise in this field also.
You raised
So,
the point, and to me, it's settled by, we raised the point and you are saying that you have this interpretation and you're the person we're relying on. Jim, if we say you have to double check the law as part of a condition, I don't know, it's a little bit vague in terms of what does that
Yeah,
mean?
I wouldn't have necessarily said that. I was just trying to make sure that we could get to yes. What I would say is that what I'm very comfortable with is, I don't know that I necessarily see, I mean, this is maybe a hard way, a silly way to make this determination, but it's what I feel is I'm not sure I can see an alternative to the sidewalk in this particular case. And I think that we would have every reason to approve this plan if the sidewalk didn't exist. So I have to say I like Ray's interpretation only because it allows us to have a sidewalk, which I think is going to benefit the greater good here, as opposed to not having a sidewalk, which would be the other alternative. So, but you know, that's just my personal way I'm thinking about that.
Hey, where are you now? Or
No, I'm very grateful of these explanations, and I like Jim very your second point, and I was trying to get there. That I still very much believe that but that's my personal opinion, that this doesn't meet the AAA, the Architectural Access Board regulations, but. As I said, I don't have to stamp these plans, and an architect and a civil engineer will, and Ray will issue a building permit. So, as long as the record reflects, and I'm sure it will, that I don't necessarily agree with the applicant's interpretation of why this is an accessible walkway. I'm willing to go along with this.
okay. Robbie, do you have anything to add to this discussion, or should we move on?
Nothing to add.
Okay. Let me ask the board, are there anything else you want to concentrate on? Any questions for the applicant?
Well, not so much questions, but I guess that, and I want to hear from the public to the extent that it's their comments, but I have to say that I thought that the planning board recommendation was very thorough, well written. I think it ticked through the boxes, having sort of helped do a little bit of drafting on our last decision with respect to a PRD. Like anything else, if you draft something, it really forces you to go line by line by line through the code again and try to remind yourself of all of the issues. And I think that it is extraordinary the extent to which this particular development has made an effort to do what I think PRDs were sort of designed to do. There's not a lot of increase in density, but some. There's affordable units, which is part of the reason for the increase in density. There's good use of the land in comparison to what would happen in a subdivision. I think they've thought about a lot of, there's a lot of diversity in terms of the housing stock, in terms of size, number of bedrooms, et cetera, et cetera. So I just think that it was and I thought that the planning board recommendation, was very strong because it wasn't conditional. It sort of said, no, this thing has really ticked all the boxes of what kind of things we're looking for. So it was just, my comment is that it really was, I thought the planning board recommendation was very thorough and very accurate on this case.
Going to the recommendation, Elizabeth, you might have a couple of updates for us. I have a question about the snow storage comment. Has that been resolved?
Yes.
Okay, so that was on page 9, that in a June 3rd, 2020 letter. So that now there's sufficient snow storage and no parking on Main Street. We're all set with that?
So yes, so I believe one of the planning board's recommended conditions would be that prior to any site work, they will amend the plans and there'll be no parking on Main Street shown.
And
And
the other, sorry, go ahead.
So follow up, Danny mentioned I did receive confirmation from the water sewer engineer that their issue with the water main tie-in has been addressed. They have some other, minor design things that would be handled part of the actual permitting process, and I believe standard conditions of approval are fine. They have no other issues. I did receive late this afternoon input from the public health director, and who did have time was able to finally review the revised plans that came in. And just give me 2 seconds. She said that based on the initial review that has been done by the consultant that the town is currently working with on reviewing septic systems, that it appears the system is likely approvable, although they will be requesting some design modifications to address some minor issues as far as compliance with Title V. But that overall, they do feel it is there is an approvable system that's been designed.
Okay.
So I believe those were the only 3 outstanding issues, and what I would do is, should the board move forward, revise the planning board's recommendation to make sure that that's reflected.
Can I just offer one thing too? Elizabeth wanted me to remind us that the name of the project is finally settled. It is now Concord Mill Run, not Mill Run Commons. So we can correct that in it as well.
Ravi and Theo, did you have anything before I open for public comment?
I do not.
I have one question for Elizabeth Hughes. I didn't see any conditions about the affordable units. Is that just because it's baked into the bylaw requirements, and so we don't need specific conditions about any deed restrictions or otherwise that we need to see?
No, if the board moves forward and approves the projects, there'll be. So I don't expect the board to, should the board move forward and vote to approve the project, it would be my recommendation that you take that vote, but then continue to your August 13th meeting to actually review your written decision and all of the conditions. And then at that point, I will touch base with our Regional Housing Services Office to make sure that appropriate conditions as far as the affordable units is also incorporated into it.
Okay, perfect. And I did have one follow-up question from last meeting for the applicant. Jim, I think, had asked about, putting solar on the roofs before, you sell the units, and the answer was the incentive structure works such that you need the individual homeowners to do it, after they take their individual units. But is there a mechanism where either the condo association or somebody could put solar on the car barns as well, since
Yes.
It looks like there's going to be EV chargers?
Yes. I think I mentioned this last time, but the roofs on the two homes that were perpendicular, their ridge was perpendicular. We've modified them, which you saw, I believe, and so that they could accommodate it. So, but there's absolutely an opportunity to, and we're certainly focused on that, especially with the EV charging stations that are going to be in the car barns. So that's something that we will work together with Concord Municipal Light Plant when we're designing the electrical infrastructure.
Okay, so it would be the individual homeowners' solar could connect to their allocated EV charger?
Yeah, so I don't know how far you want to go down this into the weeds, but what I will tell you, you're correct. What will have to happen, if you think about it, is those two structures are people, the way the legal documents work, they have a deeded parking space. And so those two structures in essence are part of the condominium, and therefore will have a house, will be attached to the house meter. So we will therefore, the power will come from the panels. Will be a separate meter to capture the electric generation and the use, and then we'll, whoever's in that space will pay a share of that.
Okay, that makes sense. That answers the question. Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and open to public comment. Elizabeth or Heather, you guys can see. I can't see who's waiting, so anyone who wants to comment should raise their hand. Nothing? Okay, go ahead and close public comment. I will echo what Jim said, probably not as eloquently, but I think that both in the spirit and letter of the PRD provisions, this really complies. It's, in my opinion, a very nice project and makes me feel good about having the PRD mechanism to use. So if there are no other questions, or are there any other questions, comments, I would say I will take a motion and agree with what Elizabeth said, that we would move to approve and then at our next meeting, review the decision.
So if it would be helpful prior to your vote if members, if from the planning board's recommendation,
Sure.
and thank you, Jim, for your compliment on its drafting. If the board is in agreement with the planning board's recommendation and it adopts the findings and comments that were made in the planning board's recommendation as part of their decision, then I can move forward and basically take the planning board's recommendation and turn that into an actual decision with some of the input from tonight on the additional items.
That sounds great, and I would expect that, yeah, the motion would speak to some of those points.
So I'd go ahead and, if I mind, not unmute.
Not on mute.
Okay, good. I've done this too many times where you end up speaking for 5 minutes and nobody hears you. So I'd move that we grant a special permit to New Communities LLC under sections 10, 11.6 and 11.6 of the zoning bylaw for 14-unit planned residential development at 1651, 1657, and 165X Main Street, parcels 2685, 2686, and 2687. In doing so, that we would first adopt the recommendations, recommendations, including the recommendations for conditions set forth in the planning board recommendation to us, that we would also adopt the statements that the planning board made in particularly in walking through section 10 with respect to the various issues in that section with respect to density, affordability, housing stock variance, and blanking on the word, but variance in the housing stock, et cetera. that all of this be subject to, our vote be subject to further review at our August meeting of a draft, specific draft recommendation to be decision to be completed in advance of that, and to incorporate not only the planning board recommendation but also discussions that we've had this evening regarding solar on car barns and walkways and other issues. Done.
I second that very well stated motion.
Fantastic. Mr. Smith,
I vote aye.
Mr. Kindermans,
Aye.
and Ms. Akers Moore, also aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations, guys. It was good.
Excited.
Thanks, Dan and Danny. Later.
All you have to do is build it.
Exactly.
Okay,
They will come.
Right.
Have a
So, Madam Chair, just so you know, at this point, I'm going to sign off, and Building Commissioner Ray Matty is here to take the next item. And your third item is a request for a continuance without discussion.
great. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks,
All right,
Elizabeth.
moving on, 7:05, John Battle. Heather, are you promoting John? Oh no, there's John. Oh. John, you there?
But it won't let me.
John, say something. I think I can hear.
I'm trying to turn my audio on and
You're
I'm
on.
trying to turn my video on.
Okay.
Your audio's on at least.
Okay, let's see if we got the video.
Yep. Audio was on.
It says the video is off because the host has it disabled. That's up to you. I don't care.
No,
The host,
Heather, can you enable that? Or I just said ask.
I don't care. It's up to you.
No, we'd love to see you. We'd love to see
Okay,
Ray
good.
too.
There you
There
are.
he is.
All right,
Thank
bye.
you, Heather.
Excellent. Good. Okay. Great. So may I go ahead and begin?
Yes, please.
Thank you. I'm here tonight to request a special permit for Devon Street as outlined in the drawings and survey presented to you previously. On the line with us are also Sarah and Ken Lazarus, the owners, and one or two abutters have also joined us. It's a fairly simple proposition as we look at ways to be able to improve a master bedroom component for this house. We chose to, rather than to try and expand the footprint, even though we had allowable FAR available to us, we chose that we would rather just complete the volume over the existing porch, which had previously been approved for a special permit, and just build a second story in that location. It gave us everything we needed without being too, and was a very quiet addition. It has been presented to both, to many of the abutters and has received support. There's at least one letter that's been emailed to you. And I think we also have, we might have someone else on board. The basic massing is fairly straightforward. It's an extension of the existing hip roof configuration. And it's a fairly quiet architectural piece, so it doesn't, it's not creating any stir. So in really simple terms, that's sort of the nature of the proposal. I'd be happy to field any questions.
Heather, can you bring up the plan for the elevations or? Okay. All right.
So that's the existing floor. You can see in the upper right-hand corner, there's an existing roof with a railing around it.
Right.
And that's the essential site of the proposed construction would be to basically to fill it in with the same alignment to the first floor and to bring the roof lines up to make a complementary design that went with the rest of the structure.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah, so I have a question, just, and maybe it's just, I just didn't understand, but can we put up the application? And most of this is going to be directed to Ray. So if you, maybe Ray, this is just if you scroll down just a bit, please, to under the building inspector thing. Yeah, right there. So under 3, it says, max GFA allowed by right 5563.5 square feet. And then it says the words over max allowed. And I
This
don't,
threw me too. I didn't
Yeah,
is that just a righto?
so I'm trying to get my bearings here again, why I made that. So I think when John did the calculations for the 50% greater that he's allowed by right, he came up
Right.
with that 5,500, but the FAR regulations wouldn't let him go that high.
Right.
See what I'm saying?
Yep.
So that's why I made that note. At 5563, he could never go that high.
Right.
So
They couldn't, so this is going to go right into my second question. And forgive me because I meant to go into the bylaws today, and I literally did have conversations from 9 until 6, whatever it was. So what I'm understanding is, first, that there's there are sort of 3 limitations here. One of the reasons that they're before us is because it's an existing non-conforming lot, and it's going to be it's going to continue the non-conformance because it's 1.5 feet over some setback, right? Not more non-conforming, but just it's a
Correct.
non-conforming. That's why we're here. What we're not here for is a sort of typical question that you're trying to increase the size of the home by more than 50%. And that's what that first calculation of the GFA is because you're only going to about sorry about the dog. You're only going about 300 or 400 square feet more room here, which is far short of 50%. It's also the other calculation, which Ray has just pointed out, is the maximum floor area ratio, which is actually 40, gets you to 4718. So in point of fact, you could never worry about the first issue about the 50% because you couldn't go above 4718. You haven't gone above 4718 either, so you should be good on both of those. And I think I understand all that, and Ray's going to confirm that in a second. And my only other question is, I thought I remembered in the back of my mind that the way you calculate the gross floor area and the way you calculate the maximum floor area are somehow different under the regulation. And I assume that given what's happening here, that both would be comfortably under the maximum floor area ratio. I'm just trying to understand if the calculation should have come up with a different, like under the gross floor area calculation, it's 40, whatever it is, square feet, 4,097 square feet. And under the maximum floor area calculation, it would be like 4,102 square feet because of the different calculation. But maybe I'm just making that up in my mind.
yeah, I'm not following you, Jim, on where you're getting the different calculations.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying, I somehow I remembered that when you calculate gross floor area, right?
Mhm.
When you calculate maximum floor area, that you calculate certain things different ways, but maybe that's not right.
I think that was the case, and those bylaws were changed a couple of years ago.
Ah, okay. That's just I've just been on, Mr. Battle, I've just been on this board too darn long.
I mean, if we're talking about 7.1.5,
Yeah.
then Yeah, and it says, determination by the building inspector that such proposed reconstruction, extension, alteration, or structural change does not increase the non-conforming nature of said structure, where the proposed extension, reconstruction, alteration, or structural change does not increase the gross floor area, excluding basements, open or screened porches, and decks contained within the existing structure by more than 50%.
Right. And then the maximum floor area must say the same thing now, I guess, is what we're
Yeah,
saying.
it does.
Ah, that's what happened. So now those calculations are exactly the same. That's what I was trying to,
Right.
that I was going to go back. All right, so now I do understand this, that under any circumstance, the maximum that could have happened here is 4,718.16 square feet. The proposal's 4,097 square feet. So the only reason that Mr. Battle is in front of us at this stage is because of his continuing an existing nonconformity over sightline.
Correct. A dimensional relief. Yeah.
Right. Okay, good. Thank you. Sorry for that, folks.
Sorry to confuse everybody with that little note.
Sorry?
I said, sorry to confuse everybody with my little note there.
You did. And then honestly, when I was reading 715, I was wondering if the building inspector had the ability to say that this, determined that this was not increasing the nonconformity, since it's really not. I know that the A, B, and C of that give you specific points, but I assume, Ray, the reading is that you can't go outside of that 7.15 A, B, C without coming before us to decide if it's not increasing the nonconformity?
By more than 50%. Is that what you're saying?
No.
No.
If it says there are some exceptions here where it says
Right.
the following circumstances shall be deemed, shall not be deemed to increase the nonconforming nature. And how you've been reading is that you're limited to, you as the building commissioner can only use A, B, C as reasons to
I
not
think-
come before us.
I think Ray could only do that if he's within the setbacks.
Yeah,
That's
Right,
what I'm
so-
saying,
right.
Robbie, is that one of those has to apply. He can't go without that and say this doesn't increase the nonconformity without coming.
right.
before. So it's kind of an
Right.
academic question more than.
Right. And it's important too, I think, that it say that, because I mean, I'll tell you now, I'm very much in favor of this project. I don't have any problem with it whatsoever, but it does actually, I mean, the extent to which somebody was worried about the setback based on one story and a railing, they might say, well, gee, but putting 2 stories and a railing there, you know, really makes it much worse for me for whatever reason, because of because you've gone through the setback. So I actually think that not having it be a building inspector, but being at a board decision is probably helpful in these
Yep.
situations.
Yep. All right. Makes sense.
It's a decision I don't want to make on a daily basis.
All right, fine. You don't have to. Any other discussion amongst the board?
No,
Just
thanks.
also wanted to make sure, Ray, it looks like you noted there was something to do with the height restriction, but was
Yeah.
that just a note to yourself to look at it and then you realize it didn't apply?
Right. That was just, that's a non-conforming structure, and we're just continuing the non-conformity.
And this, and the surveyor did the height calculations as part of his preparation package.
I'm just so glad you guys were all confused by the same things I was confused. Now I feel embarrassed about having been confused by them. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open up to public comment. Heather, I know you made me co-host, but I don't see everyone. So, is anyone raising their hand? No? Okay. As long as you're, so no, Heather?
I don't see anybody.
Great.
Great.
Okay, and to note what you said, John, is that we did receive a letter in favor of the application. Oh, is that something? No? Okay. And I think from our discussions, it seems clear that we're in favor of this, but I will, I don't know. Jim, you want to make an eloquent motion?
I don't know. I'd have to find out where the.
At least a motion?
I could have to go back to my list here. Okay, yes, I would. Yeah, I mean, I will say in advance of making the motion that it's always a real pleasure when people are trying to make accommodations and changes to their house and are being very thoughtful about the neighborhood and the places around it. And I really think that the applicant here and the owners and everybody else have made a really thoughtful decision to get a little bit more space in their house. I think it's great. So I would move that we grant a special permit under section 7.1.3 and 11.6 of the zoning bylaw to John Battle to extend the non-conforming side setback by constructing a 388 square foot addition on the non-conforming structure at 44 Devon Street. Noting, I think that the side setback is, I believe, if you can correct me, Mr. Battle, 1.5 feet?
Let me pull up the survey. The existing house is 1.6 feet off the property line. The proposed addition is 2.7 feet off the property line, measuring to the roof.
Okay, right. So that while the side setback is not made greater by this
Correct.
particular addition.
Second.
Great. Mr. Smith.
Aye.
Mr. Kindermans.
Aye.
Ms. Akers-Moore. Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Good night now.
thank you for talking to the neighbors and getting that support. That's always very helpful.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to 705 Chase, who's asked for a continuance until our August 13th, 2020 meeting. Heather, 7 o'clock for that?
Yes, because you'll do the decision deliberation during other business. So 7 o'clock.
Great. Can I get a motion?
Yes, I move to. I don't have the agenda right up here.
Oh, I have it. Theo, I'll get it.
Sorry.
Yeah, move to continue the public hearing of the JP Chase Morgan Bank for special permit and site plan under 7.2, 11.6, 11.8 of the zoning bylaw to demolish an existing bank building and construct a new bank building, et cetera, on 1134 Main Street, to continue that public hearing until 7 p.m. August 13th, 2020.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Kindermans?
Aye.
Ms. Akers-Moore? Aye. Great.
Thanks for making the motion, Jim.
Yeah, well, I was struggling before to make a motion because I didn't have the agenda in front of me. I had the same problem, but it happened to be open, so I was ready to go.
I've got on the other laptop, I don't know how many windows up now. With all the...
That's exactly
So ironically, I've gone back to paper now. Now that we're all virtual, I've gone back to printing everything out. So I think our only other business are the minutes, and I'm not sure people have had a chance to really review them. So I'm wondering if we want to continue that until our next meeting.
I definitely would. I think that I definitely would, in particular, because I think that the minutes, anytime you a large project is that's had a lot of meetings has been denied, I think it's important for us to take a good fresh look at the minutes with eyes about what we're saying there. So
Okay, sounds good. So we don't have to do anything, Heather. You're just going to put that on our next agenda.
I think you need to move to continue. I don't know. No, I don't think so.
I don't think we have to move it.
Yeah, we've never done that.
Okay.
Just say it, and it is so.
Yeah.
Thank you, Heather. That's great. Anything else from anyone, or are we all?
I guess not. I did notice in one of those minutes that in the February minutes or something, we were talking about what we might do with, I was just glancing at what we might do with the various zoning bylaws, and we had and I think town meeting is something like, I don't know when, September? Was it?
And it's funny, I was thinking that too, and I know Stephen Crane had mentioned moving some things off of that town meeting agenda that weren't. Linda, you're here. Have those zoning bylaw proposals, have those been moved off of the September meeting?
Actually, that's under discussion right now. We have a joint meeting between the select board and the finance committee on Monday. To look at various categories of all the warrant articles for the town meeting. And we've already suggested that X number will go on a consent agenda, X number will be postponed, X number are essential, etc. And it's that discussion we're going to have with the FinCom on Monday afternoon, actually.
Okay. I will say that given everything that's going on, I personally think it may make sense for us to weigh in on some other zoning issues that have come up in terms of businesses. And I know, Linda, you guys were talking about outdoor entertainment and things like that, a bunch of things. I don't really know where we are at this point, since we don't know if those are going to be moved. It would be my hope that maybe we could revisit some of the zoning changes. And Jim, I think what you're talking about is whether we discussed whether or not we wanted to have we supported the idea that the PRD would be decided by planning board, correct?
Well, I think that was the one that was still, according to the minutes, I think, and in my recollection, I think that's the one that was slightly open. We said that they could have hammerhead lots and all those kinds of things, but we weren't sure about the PRD. So
I just know there's been other discussions with, and I don't know if this is a conversation we might want to have with the town manager, as he has been looking at the zoning and seeing what he can and can't do because he's been put in this emergency situation. I don't know, Linda, if it makes sense to tell him that maybe he should come talk to us, or if he wants to talk to us, it might make sense.
That, or is it, yeah, I can do that. There isn't, I do know that Matt Johnson and the planning board intend to move the PRD, if it passes the Monday meeting that I earlier referenced, with amendment. So I don't know if you're aware that there's an amendment coming to that.
I was not.
nope.
I haven't seen that amendment yet, but I do know that they're proposing one.
So in terms of timing, if we're going to see that amendment and talk about it at our next meeting, and we're talking, when is town meeting now planned for?
September 13th, if that's the Sunday date, at 1 o'clock.
Jim, how would you recommend?
So the other piece of this that you may or may not be aware of is that because the original hearings for many of these warrant articles happened so long ago, the town moderator has suggested that they all be repeated probably about 2 weeks prior to the town meeting as it's scheduled, so that there's opportunity for each of these warrant articles to be reviewed again and public comment and the whole 9 yards.
Okay.
So hopefully you have some information prior to that.
Yeah. So Heather, can we see that amendment and any other relevant amendments to any?
Yep.
And maybe we can, Jim, does it make sense, do you think, to just put that on the agenda for next time?
Well, I think we ought, yeah, I mean, I think that we ought to have it on the agenda, and I think we ought to consider whether or not next time, whether or not we would want to hold a, if we had to, even to hold a special meeting, an additional meeting in order to catch up with everything. I can't remember, Heather, from my open meeting law, how many days we have in advance that we can schedule, have to notify for meetings, but.
You have 48 hours.
Okay, well, that's easy enough.
Yeah.
And I think that we ought to, and if there are going to be a whole bunch of zoning bylaws that are coming up before the town meeting, which, you know, that's going to be decision, Linda, you guys are going to make some other time, some other way, but I think that if there's enough of things like the PRD and there's amendments, that's the kind of thing that we can imagine will get amended and amended. So I think we just ought to make sure that we've noticed meeting times around the town meeting as well. That, I mean, I remember we used to do that for the planning board and the Public Works Commission. So you could say we're going to have a meeting, you know, like 2 hours in advance of the town meeting or whatever, because, and I don't know what we're going to do in the world of, you know, in the world of Zoom affairs for this kind of thing. But in the old days, at least, you used to sort of say, have a meeting of the planning board that was scheduled for, you know, an hour or right around town meeting all the time, so that if something came up, you'd be able to convene, meet, sitting on the floor of the town. People could stand around you if they wanted to, and you could be talking about decisions. So I just don't know what we want to think about.
I think it makes a lot of sense to get something put down. Heather, do you want to talk to Elizabeth about that, and then talk about?
I'm sure she has a plan to get all of this information to you. It's
Right.
ever changing right now.
Well, that's why, and I think that's the issue. Sorry, Linda, go ahead.
So the town moderator did say the other day that she expects all the materials to be in writing and vis-a-vis Zoom presentations and the hearings that will be on the website previous to the town meeting, that there will be no presentations at the town meeting, but and that there will be a list of motions with, most likely with recommendations from the select board, the FinCom, the planning board on various warrant articles.
Right, and so the only issue comes down to what happens if let's say somebody on the floor town meeting, I assume there's still going to be amendments who amend something, and then it's like, well, what does the zoning board say? And the zoning board goes, well, we can't say anything because we don't have a meeting. We don't have an ability to have a meeting, right? So.
Right, and select board also raised that part of that issue. So I think that's still being thought about.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, the only other thing I'd throw in is that I think that these experience with the last two PRDs that we've had, one that was rejected, one that was after a long, hard battle, 3 PRDs really, one, you know, that one that was on Bedford Street that went from 8 to 4 units or whatever, I think.
Yep.
This one on Main Street that was rejected, this one. I mean, I think that you've got a lot of people in town who have been very sensitized to PRDs, you know, from a lot of discussion. And so it feels like one where it's, I mean, I would make the comment is I don't think the PRD structure is sufficiently broken that it needs to be fixed. And I think that trying to do that in a Zoom town meeting, that we have no idea what is going to come out of it. So that would be the way I would think about it. It's just like, if we go another year with the same regulations, I think we'll be okay as a town. I don't see that as in your essential bucket. And I think it's really hard to think about those issues in the middle of, you know, all of the parameters in the middle of a Zoom town meeting. But
That's helpful discussion, and that's that kind of input is likely to be part of the discussion on Monday as we do some further refinement about what warrant articles will and in what position they will be presented.
I would
Thank you.
second that. So Linda, if you can be our voice on that one, maybe on Jim and my comments to the select board on that.
Yeah, okay.
Ravi or Theo, do you have anything to say or disagree? Or
Well, on the PRD discussion here, to take that as a little piece out of that, when we talked about the zoning change, I had not had the experience of going through a PRD on at all, neither as an applicant or the zoning board of appeals. But now that, and
You cut out a little bit, Theo. You're cutting out.
Oh, we can't hear you. Uh-oh.
Well, yeah, we can't hear you, and he doesn't hear us. Oh, we're not hearing you.
are we back up? Are we back up?
Yes, there we go.
Yes. I got unstable internet connection.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So I totally, when we reviewed that bylaw change, I had not gone through the whole process for a bylaw, and I totally understood sort of the theory behind it, and it's a second bite or a fifth bite at the apple at the end. But now that we've had three pretty in a very close succession, my opinion now is a little bit changed. Now I've had the experience of going through this process, so I would like to revisit this.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so why don't we at least at a minimum say we'll talk about it, we'll get the amendment, we'll look at it, we'll talk about it at our next meeting, and then we'll figure out the way to be most flexible to be able to meet before town meeting if there are more changes we want to review. We can talk about that with Elizabeth, Heather, figure out the best way to retain our flexibility. And Linda, I'm sure you're hearing what we're saying, so
I am.
feel free to relay it.
Okay.
Right.
Anything else from anyone? All right,
Okay, thanks, everybody.
hang up.
I move to
Yeah.
adjourn.
All
We have
right.
to have a motion to adjourn. I move it.
We always go through this and we just decide to hang up and break the quorum.
Okay,
Second,
thanks, everybody.
take care.
Good night.
Right.